Hello and welcome to Quilt Addicts Anonymous. I'm Stephanie Soebbing. I have organized my fabric a lot of ways over the years, but I think the comic book method has become my new favorite for storing my yardage. I'm going to show you how to do it today and then show you what my stash looks like with it all organized. This works really good for quilting yardage, garments. I even have wools and 108-inch backings using this method. So we're going to go through, I'm going to show you first on just a small piece of yardage, then a little bit bigger one, and then I'll give you some examples of how this works. So here's what you're going to need to get started. Obviously your stash, and it's up to you whether you want to pre-wash and press it ahead of time. For me, this is how I kind of broke it down. For garments, I pre-washed everything and pressed it before I put it on the boards. I'll still need to press again before I do anything with it, but for me, that's going to eliminate a step of needing to wash and dry. If I'm in the creative mood, all I have to do is iron and I can start cutting my pattern pieces out and be good to go. So that's good for me. I do not pre-wash my quilting fabric, so that's not a thing that's going to hold me back from being creative with something. So for those, I just pulled them straight out of storage, put them on the bin, didn't do any pre-pressing or anything with it because I know I'm going to have to press it when it comes off the board anyway. So depending on you and your preferences, you may want to consider pre-washing everything first and pressing it and then kind of doing it as you go. I took like a whole weekend to do all of my stuff for garments last fall, and I just worked at it as I went through the loads of laundry. I would then get them ready to go. So it was kind of a fun weekend. I managed to do it all with 2 kids and my husband out of town. So this is totally a doable thing. It's just like keeping up with the laundry. So here's the other thing you're going to need. You're going to need some comic book boards. My daughter's super into Pokemon. And so I went to the store that sells the Pokemon cards because I knew that they have these too. Turns out they have a surplus, and so they want to sell them through us. So we're going to have these available for you. You can do one-stop shopping. The reason why you want to use comic book boards is they are a little thicker. It's almost like a poster board consistency, but it's archival, which means you can put your fabric on there and know that there's not going to be anything from the board that you're putting it on that's going to get into your fabric that's going to make it unusable later when you want to use it. So like one of the things that I'm going to be putting on this is fabric that I designed a couple years ago, 3 years ago, and I saved some for each of my girls to do something with when they get older. So this is going to be on for a long time. I know that, and I know that it's still going to be good to go later on. The other thing you need are some sort of clip to hold it together. I've done this a couple of different ways. I've used pins. I've used bolt buddies that we have here at the shop, but those are pretty expensive when I actually looked at what it costs to do it. What I ultimately ended up using are these alligator clips. You can get them in packs of 1,000 on Amazon. You need 2 per board. So you can get 500 pieces of fabric for 1 pack of these. They're really affordable. Same with the comic book boards, and they're reusable too. So when I'm doing this for like my doll clothes, like I buy a lot of half yards pieces to do doll clothes for my kids. I will put those on these boards as well. And when I'm done with one, I reuse the board again because they're sturdy. But the initial expense, I needed 2 100 packs. And then this is what I have left. I have a pretty good stack left of my second 100 pack, and I filled up quite a bit. You can actually see some of the stash that I did with this. All right, so let's get into how to actually do this with your stash. All right, so I've got my stash of Nocturne fabric. We do have a teeny little bit of this left. I'm gonna start with the one on top here. This is just a yard cut because that's the easiest one to show you how to do this on. All right, so I have this arranged so that the selvage is near me and then the fold is up here. So this is the width of fabric. So if you ever see WOF on a pattern and they're talking about cutting across the width of the fabric, that's what we want to fold in to thirds here. And the length of the fabric is however much you ordered, yard, 2, 3, 4 yards, whatever it is you ordered, that's your length of fabric. So we're gonna take our width of fabric and we want it to be about 1/2 inch shorter than our board. So what I like to do when I'm getting the hang of it is just kind of fold it in and just make sure everything is nice and even. And then I can kind of set it up where I've got my fabric just a little bit above where this board is, and then I can fold it in. And eventually this becomes something that you can just eyeball. I definitely can eyeball it now after I've done a bunch. But at this point, I'm kind of taking a peek and I can see that I've got a little bit on each side, but I would like a little bit more space so that it kind of looks like a bolt you see in the store where you've got a little bit poking out above and below. So now that's looking good. I've got a little bit above, a little bit below. Now I can start wrapping. And so we're going to start at one end, and I like to start in just a smidge. So that way when I fold it over, I'm going at least halfway across. You could go all the way across. It doesn't really matter. As long as you have a little bit going, you're fine. You want to make sure you're nice and square, and then we're going to fold over. And just like a bolt on the shelf like we have behind me, you want to make sure that this stays nice and tidy as you go across. Don't make it too tight or your boards will kind of come in on itself, but then you can go from there. Now, when you get to the end like this, you have two options. You could just put it over like this and clip it and you're good to go. Or sometimes what I like to do to have a nice neat edge is fold that in. And so rather than wrap it around one more time, it's actually going to be on the back of that board. And then I can take my alligator clips and I can go through the layers of fabric. I want to secure it to the fold that is below. And I put the long end of that on top. So you can see that looks pretty good. We can hold quite a few layers of fabric on here at once, but this is what 1 yard looks like on it. And you can see we've got a little bit sticking out on the side. And then when you put this on, once you do a bunch of them, they sit like books on your fabric shelves. And this looks like little mini bolts. You can see everything that you have, so you can decide what it is that you want to use in that time. All right, so I'm going to do this again with a 3 yard cut so you can see what that looks like in comparison to the 1 yard as far as depth goes. And then I'll show you some of the other ones that I've done that are not your typical quilting fabric. All right, so the first thing I've done is I've cleared my entire table. You really want to have as much space as you can when you're doing this. I've got a 3 yard cut here, and I'm just going to let it drape over the sides of the table evenly for my first fold in. I find that that's the easiest to kind of get a nice even fold when you're going across. You could probably also do this on like a freshly cleaned bed that's free of like dog and cat hair, so that we're not folding that into our stash. Although I definitely did find Cocker Spaniel hair from a long deceased pet of mine that was very loved in some of the older pieces when I went through mine. So it's okay if you have a little bit of dog hair. All right, so I'm going to start just by folding in. I always like to do that selvage first so that we're not seeing it. And again, if you want to iron all this, go for it. I'm not going to because I know I'm going to have to iron it again anyway whenever I actually use this. All right, so I'm putting my piece of cardstock on there, the comic book board, just to kind of get an idea of where I need to fold into. And most of the time I have to kind of just cover where that selvage is in order to get it to fit nicely. You could also use your cutting mat to measure if you want everything to be like just so. All right, so I'm happy with how this looks. So I'm going to go ahead and scooch everything down so that I can start the rolling process. Now, I will tell you that this is a lot easier to do when you're standing behind the area that you're rolling. So if I were standing here, it would be a lot easier. I've got shelves and camera equipment right here, so I can't do that here. But it just rolls super fast when you're over there. And this one I think is pulled in a little more than the other one, but that's okay. It'll look fine in the end. The main thing is to keep everything nice and even as you're rolling it on. You don't want things to kind of get wider as you go, so you might need to do some adjusting, especially on some of those bigger pieces. And then as I get further on, I just pull more onto the table, make any adjustments as needed to keep it nice and tidy. All right, so here's the end. It's coming pretty close to the edge there, so I just kind of want to protect that. So I'm going to go ahead and tuck that one in and put my alligator clips on. That'll just help it keep from fraying if I'm pulling in and out a lot on things next to this. All right, so when I clipped it over, I clipped the part that I folded and then the layer underneath. It looks like I actually got 2 layers underneath. That's fine, that'll stay, it'll be fine. Like I said, I've also used pins in the past, bolt buddies. This is by far the most economical solution is the alligator clips, and we have an affiliate link that you can grab those in the video description down below. 1,000 to a pack for something like $15. It's really, really affordable. So for basically 30 bucks of alligator clips and comic book boards, you can really get going and getting your stash looking really nice. I also think this is a really great solution if you are space challenged, because if you have a closet or a bookshelf that you could use, you can really make this really very pretty. And this is 3 yards of fabric. This is 1 yard of fabric. That's not taking up a lot of space there. It's maybe like 2 inches between the two of them. And it looks really good. It's gonna look gorgeous when you put it on your shelves. Now, one thing I would do is make sure that you are in kind of a light, tight area. So basically no direct sunlight. At one point I had my stash in an area that received a lot of sunlight, and there were a few fabrics, not all, but a few that did have some sun bleaching where the fold hit here. And you just wanna make sure that that's not happening to you. So as much as fun as it is to have it all on display and you can see everything, if you have closet doors you can close or you're not in direct sunlight, that is going to be ideal for the longevity of your stash. I brought in 3 other examples because not everyone watching this might be a quilter, and I want you guys to see how this works. This is several yards of flannel. You can see that that works really well, and it is really very compact and works pretty good. You can tell I did not iron this because I know I'm going to have to iron it before I actually use it. This is 3 yards of 108-inch wide back. This is enough backing to go on a king-sized quilt. And you can see this is really pretty low profile, and it looks nice, as this is what you see from the sides. You could have your whole section of backings, so you can just pick the perfect one that's ready for your quilt. And this is 3 or 4 yards of a wool coating fabric. This is like the thickest stuff that you can get. And even that looks really good. And look, this one stands up all on its own. It is looking fantastic. And this is one where I did it before I found the alligator clips, and so I used pins in there instead. I'm going to go ahead and actually swap those out. Even though we're in kind of a low moisture area where my stash is, I don't want to take the risk of it having any problems with, you know, rusting or anything like that. Especially like, say, if you're in a basement sewing room or something, you don't want to run that risk. And that actually held really well with that as well. This one I did not turn under. I felt like it worked pretty well as is, and I didn't want to add any extra bulk. So really a great solution for storing all kinds of fabrics, from your quilting cottons to your garment fabrics. Like I said, I even purchase a lot of times garment fabrics that have tiny prints in half-yard increments for doll clothes for my kids, and I store those on those. I've got tons of tiny little things. I've got sequin prints on this. You name it, knits, I've got it on this method. Looks great. I can see everything that I have and what I might need to coordinate with. I could just bring this whole thing with me to the store, and I'm ready to go with this. This has been pre-laundered. All I have to do is cut my pattern and go. So it's really an exciting thing to do, and it looks so pretty. Like that feeling you get when you walk into the quilt store and you see all the fabric. You can see that with your own personal stash, and it looks gorgeous and it's so much fun. So definitely check that out. We also recently posted a video that showed my entire stash organization process. I took it from a hot mess to a beautiful display in about 3 weeks of just working on the weekend. So go check that out, and we'll link that video for you as well. But comic book boards you can get on our website, shop.quiltaddictsanonymous.com while supplies last. The alligator clips, we've got an affiliate link to Amazon for those. Again, probably 15 bucks will get you 1,000 of those clips and 100 of those boards. And I needed about 150 boards to do my entire stash for my garment fabric and my quilting yardage. I found, you always find more. You think you're done and then you find more. So I have 2 more stacks of these that need to get organized for my kids to use someday. But you know, it's going to look gorgeous, and there'll be less dust collecting because it's vertical instead of, you know, sitting on top of something. And most importantly, you can see everything you have, so you know what you have to work with and what you truly do need to go get to supplement. So check that out, and everything's over at shop.quiltaddictsanonymous.com. Let me know what storage organization you use in the comments below, or if you are immediately running out to go do this on yours. I wish I would have started so much sooner because it looks so pretty. All right, until next time, happy quilting.